Hey everyone, and welcome to the 25th episode of the One Shiny Family Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Herder. On my own this week for like a second time. What a day. But we're in September, so that's pretty exciting. That is really exciting. Apologies for the lack of an episode last week. But luckily, the lack of an episode last week means that we have a lot of stuff to discuss this week. At least on my own. So let's waste no time and get started with Pokemon Sword and Shield as a new shiny raid event has started. This one is themed around cleaning Pokemon with the chance to get shiny and Chinchino, and this will run until 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Sunday. I tried doing some of these raids earlier this afternoon, and well, as of when I'm recording this episode, which is Friday, September 3rd? Yeah, September 3rd. Days are just going too fast. But I only did like 2 or 3 Chinchino raids because trying to get into a Chinchino raid on the Wycom is like trying to pull teeth. It's awful. And the Wycom in general is just garbage. I've complained about it in the past, but this one is featuring, in addition to shiny Chinchino, we got Altaria, Wimpod, as well as Mo Rotom, and more people seem to be interested in Mo Rotom than the shiny target for this event. I sort of talked to some friends about it, and they said, if only it was shiny Altaria. I would be excited about shiny Altaria if I didn't have a lot of them already. Playing Pokemon Go and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. In addition, after the fallout with Pokemon Go last month, Niantic gave an update on after their entire task force stuff that they were going to take through. They were going to do it throughout all of August. I did not write this down in my notes, so I'm going to go find their Twitter page so that we can at least get a brief rundown and TLDR of just what exactly they are doing for Pokemon Go going forward. One thing that I remember from their blog post was Niantic saying that they want to try and be more committed to being a little bit more transparent with these somewhat frequent like development updates or something like that. And given how lackluster Niantic's communication has been, especially in August, it's been pretty awful. So one of the first things that they touched on at the beginning of their blog post is the 80-meter interaction radius for the Pokestops and gyms is going to be a permanent addition to the game. That's awesome because it just made the game a lot more accessible and safer to play because you don't need to be like hovering over a stop just to be aim range to spin it. So that's very welcome, and Niantic seems to have understood that it's become more than just a temporary pandemic bonus. It just made the game a lot better to play in general. So good on them for reverting that controversial decision of going back to 40 meters because it was not a good move. Then they're going to also be implementing seasonal global bonuses, starting with the Season of Mischief, which is going to be happening throughout this month, and I believe all the way until December, if I remember correctly. I'm going to go quickly look that up. Season of Mischief. Let me go find their here. So yeah, Season of Mischief is gonna, of course, see the debut of Hoopa. So that is pretty neat. A couple more Pokemon from Gen 6 are being added as well. Some of which are already in the code, like Furfrou, and I believe, I don't remember. I should have looked all this up before I sat down and started recording. Go me. This is what I get. This is what being unprepared gets you. However, in regards to that, yeah, the communication stuff from Niantic is the last thing that's touched on in their blog post about the task force, and and part of it says, quote, starting in October, we will begin publishing a developer diary every other month to share the latest priorities, events, and other features for the game. I appreciate them committing to having better communication with their install base, because as I already said, their communication in the past was terrible, so this is good. There wasn't much information other than that. Like, it was a lot of words, but not a ton of action, but it's a step in the right direction, and while I do want to get my hopes very high, I don't trust Niantic right now, so I'm going to be skeptical and hopeful that they'll stay committed and stick to their guns and stick to what they promise in the future, because Pokemon Go, it's in a bit of a shaky state right now, but at least in regards to player feedback, but hopefully things will start taking a turn for the better after this task force stuff, because I feel like this whole thing could have been avoided if they just better communicated and actually listened to the player feedback from rolling back the pandemic bonuses, but it seems like they're gonna be doing other stuff to compensate, but we'll see. And also, they're gonna be doing the makeup stuff for the in-person Safari Zone event, which in-person events during the pandemic, especially with how the pandemic is right now, I don't agree with it. However, they've said that people can also who have bought a ticket for last year's Safari Zone can participate remotely. So from that perspective, I'm like, okay, I can understand. Give people a chance to participate in Safari Zone even without actually attending in person. I feel like that should be the norm going forward, because not everyone can afford to go out to this specific location to do Safari Zone, but still want to be able to participate in some form. And I think that's being able to participate remotely for ticket holders. That's great. I really do want to see that for future in-person events. All right, getting back on track here, because a brand new web-based anime series was announced earlier this week, and it's going to be called Pokemon Evolutions. This series will be featuring 8 episodes, 1 in each of the current regions, with the first episode coming on the 9th of September. In fact, the whole release schedule was already posted, at least on Cerebi. I believe it's on the Pokemon website as well, because that's where I first saw the schedule. Let me go find. Okay, so there is an article on Pokemon's website. I am not going to play the trailer because that's a good way for my channel to get kicked in the face with copyright. And yeah, the release schedule is on Pokemon's website. And so on the first episode is going to be in the Galar region called the Champion. Following that will be the Alola episode called the Eclipse, with Kalos in the Vision, Unova in the Plan, Sinnoh in the Rival, Hoenn in the Wish, Johto in the Show, and Kanto in the Quest. On Cerebi, it's known as the Discovery, probably going off of the Japanese names, which would make sense. So I'm gonna put this on this screen so that I can revise my notes to keep it consistent with the English names. Alright, and while we are doing that, but yeah, this is a very interesting idea. This is the 3rd time that Pokemon is making a separate web-based anime series for international viewers. I did not actually say what the air dates are. I just listed all the episodes, but did not say what the air dates are. So, Galar's September 9th, like I said. Alola is September 23rd. Kalos is October 7th. Unova, October 21st. But then Sinnoh is December 2nd. Hoenn is December 9th. Johto December 16th, and Kanto December 23rd. No episode for November, which is a little weird. So, I mean, we gotta wait like a month and a half for the next step for the Sinnoh episode after Unova airs. It's very interesting. It looks really pretty though. The footage that they provided looks fantastic. It gives me vibes of Pokemon Generations, actually. It just looks awesome. I can't wait for this. It looks clean, and we're getting more Lily content, so that's hype. And the poster that they have for Evolutions looks really cool too. Going left to right, we have the Johto episode with a Kimono girl, Sinnoh with Barry, Kalos with Lysander. Following that, we have Galar with Leon, Alola with Lily, Unova with Ghetsis, Hoenn with Zinnia, and Kanto with green/blue. And they're using her Let's Go design, which is really interesting. And also something interesting to know, in the snippet of the Alola episode, we see Lily with Celine in her Ultra Sun Ultra Moon design. So that's a really cool detail. And just in general, this just looks so hype. I hope these episodes are not as short as the Generations episode. I just realized that this is the 4th time that we're getting a web-based anime series. Because we got Pokemon Origins, then we got Generations, and then Twilight Wings, and finally, the most recent one is going to be Pokemon Evolutions. I like the name, but this release schedule I do not like at all. It's very inconsistent. Like, the December episode, like, there's 4 episodes in December, probably just conclude Pokemon's 25th anniversary in 2021. So they're gonna just have so much content out for December, but October very light, September very light, nothing for November. But then again, we got Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl coming out in November, so that'll probably make up for the loss of it. But does it say how long each episode is going to be? The article on Pokemon's website does not say, which is a little disappointing. I hope it's not like 5 minutes. I want it to be something closer to like 10 to 15 minutes. I think that would be very nice. The ideal situation would be like along the lengths of like a Pokemon Origins episode, but that might be a little bit of wishful thinking there. But regardless, as I stated earlier, I'm really looking forward to this. It looks great. We're actually going to be seeing the faces of the protagonists, so that is cool. So the only shots that they actually included on Pokemon's website is the Galar episode, which makes sense considering that is coming first, which is coming out next week on Thursday. So that is pretty exciting. And just from these screenshots, I really like the look of this. I can't get enough of just how good this looks. So I'm excited about it. But regardless, moving on from that, because we got one thing about the Pokemon anime that I just want to briefly touch on. First of all, today's episode, on the Espeon and Umbreon episode, it was pretty good. Better than last week's. Last week's episode, it was pretty stupid, aside from the fact that Go now has Inteleon. So that's pretty hype, though that evolution felt pretty rushed because Drizzile did not get that much development or screen time in general. It just didn't do much after it evolved, and so kind of rushing it into Inteleon. Like, I get that it looked up to Inteleon in the Mason Impossible episode, but at least give us more screen time. Like, Rabu's evolution into Cinderace was also handled really quickly, but it got some actual screen time and development involved in that. But Drizzile didn't get the same kind of treatment, which is disappointing. And the opening sequence for at the very beginning of today's episode, it was updated to include Italian, but the actual opening credits is it's far outdated because it still has Sabo in there. And just overall, we are overdue for a new opening, so hopefully the anime will finally give us a new opening, and maybe even a new song too, because I like 1, 2, 3, but some people are just like a little tired of it. So I can understand where they're coming from. But with that said, next week's episode is going to be the return of Project Mew. This one focusing on Go's first mission, which will involve collecting and protecting Harvesta eggs, if I remember correctly. I'm going to go to Cerebee's website to make sure that I got that correct. So I'm just going to go to their anime stuff. It just shows the stuff from just a summary about today, but I have not seen the summary for next week's episode, but it looks pretty cool. But I don't think it was said where it's going to be taking place. We're going to be seeing Urshifu for the first time in the show, so that is pretty hype. And this is a very different kind of mission compared to what we saw when we saw Gary doing his Project Mew mission. So that's interesting. But regardless, first Project Mew mission for Go should be a good one. Then, and also during today's episode, I noticed a little bit of foreshadowing with Chloe's Eevee when Chloe got captured and Eevee was trying to figure out when Chloe was being held. That's giving me some foreshadowing that it could evolve into Espeon. I know Callum will really love that. I'm sure he is just begging for it to happen, because Espeon is his baby, and I absolutely understand, because Espeon is a great Pokemon, and I honestly would not mind seeing Chloe get Espeon, because I don't want overlapping evolutions for Ash's companion, for the main protagonist, because of course Sylveon is with Serena, we got Glaceon with May. But regardless, that's all I really have to say about the anime. So let's move on to actually the last thing that I have written down for today. It's a really short one. I do apologize. There's only so much that I can do for an episode where I just ramble by myself. But it's about another rumor. I know I said we don't really report on rumors. Like, there was that time where I think we touched on when the Switch OLED was in the rumor mill. But this one really caught my eye, and I just want to briefly touch on it. Not so much about the rumor or the reports themselves. It's more of a personal thing, and it's the fact that some reports are saying that Game Boy and Game Boy Color could be coming to Nintendo Switch Online in the very near future. Now, I want this to happen so badly. The Game Boy was my childhood, especially the Game Boy Color. You know, I may call myself DSPX 900, but it was the Game Boy Color where it started it all for me. Like, I have my original Game Boy Color in Kiwi, but only for a few months because my parents later traded it in for a Graphite Game Boy Advance SP. But that was still like the best thing that they did, because I spent so much time playing on my GB ASP. Like, being able to play the entire Game Boy and Game Boy Color library, in addition to the fantastic library that's also on the Game Boy Advance itself, was just phenomenal. And having Game Boy and Game Boy Color on the Switch would be such a great thing, because it needs more legacy content. And because right now, the current situation with legacy content on the Switch is not great. There's not a lot of options available. But that does bring up a question when it comes to Game Boy and Game Boy Color on Nintendo Switch Online. It's not so much how they're going to implement it, because I'm pretty sure they're going to implement it like how they implemented SNES, for example. However, my biggest question is, what are they going to do with Pokemon on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, because I could see it going onto the service, but I feel like with Pokemon, I feel like locking Gens 1 and 2 behind a online subscription service on the Switch would definitely ruffle some feathers. And so I feel like if Nintendo wanted to get Gens 1 and 2 on the Switch, I feel like that will have to be part of a bigger collection. And that's kind of why I touched on that in the very first episode of the podcast when I was talking about the idea of a collection happening. But now that the Game Boy is in the rumor mill to come to Switch Online, maybe I feel like with Pokemon, it could go either way. It could be go onto the service like normal, with online communication even. But on the other hand, what if Pokemon wants to add Pokemon Home support to Gens 1 and 2 on the Switch? That is a question that I think many people have on their mind. And I feel like they could implement the same kind of improvements that Nintendo would have had for Game Boy games on the Switch to the Gens 1 and 2 re-releases on the Switch. But there's another thing that could hold this back, as at least for at least the Game Boy Pokemon games on the Switch, as the new PEGI guidelines when it comes to gambling in video games, where if a video game has any form of gambling, then it would receive an 18+ rating. And Gens 1 and 2 have slot machines in the games. Now, they dodged the 18+ scare when they got re-released on the Virtual Console back in 2016, but they still got a 12+ rating in Europe, the PEGI 12 rating. And so I feel like, with Gens 1 and 2, if they were to be re-released now, then they would get the 18+, they would get the PEGI 18 rating. And that would not fly, I would imagine, at least with consumers. I get that, the gambling can be an absolutely huge problem. I'm all for it. But I feel like if Nintendo wanted to keep the PEGI 3 or PEGI 7 rating for Gens 1 and 2 in Europe, then they have to modify Gens 1 and 2 so that they don't include the slot machines. Because to my knowledge, the European version of Pokemon Platinum did not have the slot machines at all. You could still go in the game corner and talk to NPCs who will give you coins, but that was not like that in the North American version or the Japanese version. But the Japanese version of Heart Gold Soul Silver were the only ones that kept the slot machines, whereas the international versions of Heart Gold Soul Silver had Voltorb Flip. And I think I do prefer Voltorb Flip. I don't care for it though, but it'd be interesting to see if with Gens 1 through 4, if they were to get re-released on the Switch. And with Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald, they had a second minigame in the game corner, and it was a roulette table. So I feel like that would have to get cut as well, because the game corner was not even present in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It would have been nice to have Voltorb Flip in those games, but whatever. And, we already know that the game corner is not coming back in Brilliant Diamond and Shiny Pearl, because the Style Shop is going in the location of the game corner. Tangents aside, I would love, going back to Game Boy, I would love to see it come over to the service, because it has such a phenomenal library. We got the original version of Tetris, along with Tetris DX, the original version of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, and its DX version. Kirby's Dream Land. Kirby got his start on the Game Boy with Kirby's Dream Land in 1992, with Kirby's Dream Land 2 coming a couple years later. Then we got Metroid 2, Return of Samus on the Game Boy. The Super Mario Land games were on there. Wario Land got its start on the Game Boy. Donkey Kong 94, that game was apparently excellent. I never played it, but I heard it was good. There were some Mario Sports games on the Game Boy Color with Mario Tennis and Mario Golf, which were kind of like RPGs. And it was fun. There's just so many good games on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. We got some Final Fantasy games on there too. It's just a phenomenal library, despite the fact that the technology was not as advanced like the NES or even the SNES. But the novelty of being able to play video games on the go back in 1989, it was absolutely there, and it just sold like bananas. It was absolutely crazy. So I feel like the idea of Game Boy coming to the Nintendo Switch Online, it sounds amazing. Now I know some people are gonna bring up the idea of Game Boy Advance coming to the service. I see that coming later, probably either next year or 2023. Because if the reports are true and Game Boy does come to the service, then that automatically means that Nintendo's going to want to go in chronological order of when their products release. They're not going to have a separate schedule for home consoles and handhelds. They're just going to go through everything. So NES from 1985 came first, followed by the SNES 1990, 1991. That came second. With Game Boy in no. I just realized, because the Game Boy came before the SNES. Did they? Hang on. Game Boy release date. So, looks like it came out in Japan first in April 1989, with a North American release date happening in August of that year, with the system coming to Europe in late 1990. So, if I look up the SNES North American release date for the SNES, it was in August. It began shipping. So according to Wikipedia, it began shipping in limited quantities in August of 1991 with a nationwide release in September of that year. So the Game Boy came first. That is interesting because the Game Boy, like I said, came out in 1989, whereas the SNES came out in North America in 1991. So it seems like Nintendo is going to have a different release schedule for their consoles. Huh. That is interesting. I did not think about that. The good thing I looked this up while recording, that way I don't look like a complete idiot. But, like I said, I think Game Boy, the idea of Game Boy coming to the Switch is a great idea, and I'm glad, and it seems like Game Boy Color is going to be thrown in there too. Which makes sense, considering that if I go back to Google here and do Nintendo hardware sales and go to their sales data on Nintendo's Japanese website and scroll down to the Game Boy, they consider the Game Boy Color. They lumped the Game Boy Color in with the original Game Boy instead of being its own system like the Game Boy Advance. That's because the Game Boy Color was more of a midlife update to the original Game Boy, as opposed to being a full second generation Game Boy like the Game Boy Advance. So having Game Boy Color in the mix with the original Game Boy would be really interesting to see. But the fact that they're adding Game Boy, the idea of them adding Game Boy after adding the SNES to the service, which came after the Game Boy initially, it would be an interesting move. It would be a very, very interesting move, to say the least. I am hopeful that this will actually happen, because we are overdue for another system to come to Nintendo Switch Online, and I think Game Boy is the perfect system to add next, followed up by probably Nintendo 64, probably next year. Depends on if they want to release two systems on the service at once, with N64 and Game Boy Advance. But I could see N64 come in 2022 with Game Boy Advance in 2023. But around that time frame, we could be looking at, maybe a next generation Switch, or maybe the mid-life update to the Switch, the Switch Pro that many people were hoping for to come out this year, but instead we're getting the Switch OLED. It's interesting to say. It's interesting to see. It's a very interesting release schedule, to say the least. But, of course, none of this is confirmed yet. I'm not getting my hopes up too high, but, I would love, like I said, multiple times, I would love to see Game Boy come to the service. Mostly because of nostalgia. I don't have as much personal nostalgia of the NES and SNES. I have an SNES, but I only have one game on it, and it's Super Mario World, but I never had one growing up, but I had a Game Boy Color and a Game Boy Advance SP growing up. And I played that stuff for like so long. I still have my original graphite SP, the very one that my parents bought for me. It's in terrible condition, but it still works, despite the fact that despite the fact that it's fallen apart, which is spectacular. But regardless, I like I said, I don't see Game Boy Advance coming to this. I think it's just gonna be Game Boy and Game Boy Color to start. I don't see Nintendo tossing in a special controller to go along with it, like they did for the NES and SNES when they came to the service. Mainly because the Game Boy was a portable. The only way they can justify having a special controller is if they do special editions for the Joy-Con and or the Pro Controller, or maybe even the consoles or even the Switch consoles themselves. But I see them just going with a special edition controller, or maybe they'll just do the NES Dogbone controller for the Game Boy and just give it Game Boy colors. No pun intended, but you get what I mean. Give it the aesthetic of the original Game Boy shell, just on a controller instead of the actual console. But like I said, take this with a grain of salt. There are also rumors saying that we could get a Nintendo Direct this month, but given the past Septembers, that has happened, but I'm not getting my hopes up about that. But if we do, in fact, get a Nintendo Direct this month, then it's very possible that we'll get Game Boy get announced for Nintendo Switch Online during that presentation. But this is just mere speculation. But it's just something I wanted to touch on. I don't like keeping up on rumors that much because they like to get people's hopes up for no reason, even if there is substantial evidence behind them to back them up and give them credibility. But I'd rather wait for official confirmation from Nintendo before I get any excited, before I feel any excitement. There we go. Because at the end of the day, this is still just a rumor, and we have no official confirmation from Nintendo. Once we do, if we do get official confirmation from Nintendo, then we can let the hype train roll, and it would be. I want this to happen, but we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. And with all that, I think I am already done this week. It's a very, very short episode, but those are all the big points I want to discuss this week. And plus, it's a one-man show this week. I actually managed to make another episode just on my own. That is amazing. I do wish we could have made a bigger splash for the 25th episode, but sometimes things just don't work out. And it's not everyone's fault. Some stuff just happens, and you can't get mad at them for it. But hopefully things will start looking up next week. Why did I say that? But I don't know. I'm just rambling for no reason. I'm gonna get out of here. So I want to thank you for tuning in. And until next time, through it all, we're still a family. One shitty family.